All right, YouTube, what's going on? Welcome back to another video, and I'm here again learning more about boxing. And today I took one of the recommendations from the comments down below, and we're gonna be watching Winky's high guard. All right, let's just jump right in, baby. Woo! So right now we have Winky. I'm not very familiar with who he is, but hopefully I'll learn more about him in this video. Let's get in.
Two-time unified champion Winky Wright had some of the most beautiful defense ever seen in the ring. But unlike many of the slick and agile boxers with the claim to that moniker,
Oh wow.
Wright was no smooth trickster. Wright was a tank.
So he just takes the punches with
his
gloves?
Completely unfazed with his adamantium high guard, on his way to rain down a volley of destruction on a competitor whose armor was not so sturdy.
When you do a high guard, is it hard to keep it up and take the punches? Is that what he's trying to let us know?
The more you watch him, the more Wright seems like a contradiction. One of the most defensive, closed-up boxers when his guard was up.
Weird. So how would you get through him? Do some fighters just keep going straight at the face? Because I've seen the guard be broken by multiple fighters where they have the guard up and then all of a sudden it'll break and they'll get hit right in the face. I also assumed that if you did body shots that he would have to drop and block the guard for his abdomen, have it up, and then he'd have to put it down. But it seems like it doesn't matter if he goes straight, around, or body. He has the guard covering everything. It seems like a shield.
And one of the most reckless punchers while on the attack, dropping his punches,
Oh,
keeping
wow.
his hands low, and leaning into his shots. So let's look at his impenetrable
Oh, wow.
guard first, and how that guard created unique opportunities to counter and build on those counters.
So he was like a counter fighter.
Although it may seem like he was simply absorbing punishment, Wright was usually only taking a marginal amount of force on his high guard, and this was in the long run often more damaging for his competitors than for him. By allowing them to unload, he drained their energy, lulled them into a false sense of security,
very smart,
and enticed them to open themselves up.
Does it hurt when someone punches you when you're in guard position?
Speaking, there were three concepts that Wright employed to create his well-developed high guard. The first and least used method was to simply block,
he covers his whole
brace,
body
and take the punch. This was the most damaging tactic for him, and sadly, the one that many novice boxers operate at all of the time. It saved Wright from taking a direct punch to the face, but if you use this tactic exclusively, you'll find it gets tiring quickly and comes with a number of problems.
Wouldn't she just uppercut?
Was for Wright
Would
to
that
make
work?
subtle arm adjustments to diffuse and deflect his opponent's punches, or even knock them off
whoa, he moved it. He moved it. Oh, so he just kind of like moves around.
Was to just narrow his guard to block a straight, or raise or lower one arm to defend.
Okay. Oh, I see.
And deflect.
He goes down and moves with the punch.
And far more common tactic was for Wright to reinforce his blocks with both arms, crossing one over to act as a sort of small forearm.
Oh, I see.
This strategy is incredibly simple and effective, but it is also dangerous, as it relies entirely on reflexes, so mistiming it could result in
I
Wright
see. So it's a lot more reaction. Okay.
However, when done correctly, Wright received near zero damage or impact, and was able to further trap and throw his opponent's punch off course while pressing forward.
Is this still used today? This concept of the high guard and just kind of standing still and just taking the punch like a wall. You're basically like a wall in war, right? Or like a shield where you just take the amount of damage and then you kind of poke out, bang, step, set, poke, bang. But is this still usable? Like, what was his record? Was he a good fighter, or is this just something that only he was able to perfect?
Notice how Wright keeps his guard attached to his opponent's punch, throwing it off course even
and
further.
moving it momentum
Sometimes Wright
wise.
would even throw both arms out in front of him, away from his face. Something that's usually
it's like he's a goalie, you know,
amongst novices, but can be used effectively by pros. The third and most advanced method was for Wright to use head movement and footwork to reposition his guard, meaning he could rearrange his guard to deflect or dispel the force of his competitor's punches through his movement. This could be accomplished through twisting, tilting, or pulling.
Oh, okay.
Notice how when Wright turns in time with his competitor's punch, that one forearm now works like a parry, and the other works as extra protection.
Oh, I see. Very smart. Is this why Floyd Mayweather was so hard to beat? I feel like he used this tactic because the first couple rounds, he would be in guard position, or he would just be in this kind of like turtle phase where he's just kind of like really shelled, and then the opponent would get tired, and that's when he'd come out maybe in the third or fourth round. The only reason why I assume that that's what he does is because I saw him fight Logan Paul, and I've seen some clips of him fighting Pacquiao, so I don't know if it's relatable.
And while this is hard to distinguish at full speed to the casual observer, it resulted in exponentially less force making it through Wright's defenses. Another great aspect of twisting with his high guard is that many times it worked for whatever punch the opponent was throwing, so long as Wright noticed from which side.
Oh,
instance,
I see.
If they threw
Okay.
a right, then twisting to his right would either dispel the force of a hook or slip a straight.
Okay, it would kind of like ruin the momentum
For
of the
body
punch
shots,
and then
Wright would
lessen the
actually turn
power.
into the
Okay.
punches, ideally smothering them as he did so. Wright could also take off a lot of the sting through footwork. He could simply step back, for instance.
Okay.
Or he could pivot away and angle out. Circling away from his opponent automatically diffused some power by ensuring their punches were no longer fully aligned. And best of all, both his head movement and footwork created new angles from which he could counter
Interesting.
or launch into a new attack.
Would this also mean that you'd have to study the opponent a little bit more than usual? Because if you're going to be standing there and you're not going to be dancing around the ring and having them kind of like, you know, ruin their momentum and, you know, not properly get their stance in, you would be studying the opponent a lot more because you would have to know what's their favorite jab, what's their favorite reverse punch, how they like to move, front leg forward, where do they enjoy being in the ring, what are their combos like. I feel like you have to study them a little bit more and understand that, like, what are their strong suits and weak points so that you can predict or react a lot more comfortably when fighting someone in that high guard. If that's even true, I'm just speaking and saying what my thoughts are on the process. I might be wrong, or probably am wrong because I'm a nub.
These positional adjustments worked in tandem with Wright's guard adjustments. As minute as they seem, these small, well-timed, nuanced, subtle maneuvers.
Okay, so even
went a
combos
long
don't
way
work.
to the difference between victory
I'm
and
just trying to figure out
And now that we've
how you
looked
would
at
get
one
'em.
part of Wright's style, it's time to look at another important part. And to do that,
His offense?
is the excellent boxing breakdown channel, Hidden Gem.
Thanks for having me on the channel. Let's now take a look at
Nice.
some of Winky Wright's offensive strategies, showcased in some of his fights. Of course, the
Okay.
first thing when it comes to starting offense is the punch that is widely considered the most important punch in boxing,
Jab?
the jab. Wright would almost always initiate his attacks with the jab. Despite him being a southpaw, Wright even liked to initiate with the jab against his orthodox opponents. This isn't common in boxing, since lead hands in open stance matchups line up with one another and act as a natural obstacle for the jab.
Yeah, it's funny because I also fought like this. I fought southpaw in Taekwondo, but it wasn't called southpaw. It was just called right leg forward or goofy stance. It made the other opponent uncomfortable because we were in an open stance, so some of the techniques or the kicks that they would like to use kind of get blocked naturally because it just doesn't work. So like, for instance, I would kick with my front leg, or in boxing terms a jab, and it would just kind of like bundle up or just be awkwardly placed. So a lot of people would try to switch their stance and fight uncomfortable for them, and they would just make me more comfortable. So it was like it's like I was playing chicken with them.
So while Wright's strategy of almost always setting up his offense with the jab is
So he goes
widely
right
considered
back.
good
It comes
fundamental
back.
boxing, when it comes to high-level boxing, many of us know anything repetitive or predictable is likely to be timed and countered by a smart opponent.
Yes.
However, not all jabs are one and the same, and Wright would mix up the delivery of his jab using different footwork techniques
Okay.
to throw off his opponents and remain unpredictable. This is how Wright found so much success using the jab so much throughout a fight.
So he basically just used his jab techniques, and his offense was primarily his jabs, and he used his footwork to change the tempo, I would assume, and to change the rhythm so it's less predictable. And he would just keep setting up his front jab. I'm guessing it also took maybe a lot less energy, so he's able to still do damage slowly. And then when the opponent tries to come at him thinking that this is the opportunity to get him now, he goes into high guard, lets them spend their energy. They get tired, and I'm assuming maybe at that time he'll start going with maybe a different combo, maybe jab with a reverse, and see that, oh, this is the opportunity to start going, initiating more combos. I'm just assuming this is my thought process.
The first technique is a long-range step jab, which he uses early in fights to pressure his opponents back. This catches many of his opponents off guard because of a quick and deep step in with his lead foot that covers more distance than they likely expected.
Very cool. Oh, and then there's a reverse.
Wright
Okay.
even slips his head after jabbing as a built-in defense to remain defensively responsible, and this is a common step jab that every beginner is taught.
Wow.
The second technique he would utilize is a jab off of what's known as a Dempsey drop step
Very
or
cool.
falling step. This is done by shooting the jab with his weight being driven off of the lead foot.
Yes.
There are many other videos that go in depth explaining this.
And then he
technique.
goes high guard. Well
Even though
done.
this isn't a common technique for throwing the jab, it works well in conjunction with his step jab because the step jab is thrown with the weight on the rear foot so that he could push off of it. When Wright conditions his opponents to expect the step jab when his weight is on the rear foot, they won't expect the jab to come when his weight is on the lead foot after stepping forward.
Interesting. Okay, I'm understanding what he's
Once
saying.
his opponents
Very
start
smart.
getting the timing down and start countering these jabs,
Okay.
Wright switches it up and shoots his jab with a hop step with both feet. This allows his rear foot to be planted immediately so that he has the balance.
That's what I
follow
thought.
up
Well done.
and turn the jab into a 1-2 combination where his straight left.
Okay,
will
I'm
counter
seeing
his
it. I'm
opponent's
seeing
counter
it.
attempts.
Okay.
And that's it for me. Once again, thanks for having me as a guest on the channel.
And he did mention that for amateurs, this is what they do, but in professional fights, this is what not to do. Amateur fighting and professional fighting, obviously two different categories. But would this work on both? Would this only work on one or the other? I don't know.
It should be clear that Winky Wright deserves a place among the defensive masters of boxing.
Wow, okay.
Even if he didn't possess the flashy, fan-friendly style of his more evasive counterparts.
Like Floyd
For any
Mayweather.
practitioner or fan, he's well worth checking out. Speaking of well worth checking out, I've linked to Hidden Gem's channel below. He has a lot of quality videos that I think you guys would really enjoy. From the Modern Martial Artist, this has been David Christian, wishing you happy training.
Nice. I like that. I like that. To the person who gave me this recommendation, thank you for showing me this video. It's giving me a little bit more knowledge of boxing as a whole, because I know all we get to look at is offensive strikes because we're seeing knockouts and powerhouses. So it's really cool to kind of take a seat back and look at more of the defensive part of boxing, and the game is now building up as a whole. So it's really cool to kind of see how it compares to my sport. And I tend to be more of a counter fighter. I like playing more defensively. I'm not too big on striking first. And when I do strike first, it's to do a setup for a counter. So for instance, I will throw my front leg kick, expecting them to react so I can counter with my back leg. Similar to how Winky was doing. We don't have like a guard position. So if someone does attack you, the only thing that we can do is just use our footwork to move away or jam in and mess their distance and their leg length. But other than that, it's really eye-opening to see boxing as a whole. Definitely developing my toolbox, even though I haven't boxed, I haven't trained boxing, I know nothing about boxing. I know I'm a nub, I'm a loser. So if you guys enjoyed this video, please leave a like, comment down below, and don't forget, before you leave, subscribe to the channel because it helps. And I'll catch you guys on the next one. Cheers for now. Peace, peace, peace. Let's go. We're gonna play some defense. That's right, let it be with a nice sense. Boy. Peace.